What's going on, guys? It's Bellator 277 going down from California, and yeah, just tons of California prospects on the show. As with any Bellator card, there's just a bunch of mismatches. I mean, by this point, you're watching this video, these lines have been absolutely blown up. But of course, like any show, there's going to be a couple pie shitters, and there's a couple lines that seem to be a little bit off. So hopefully we can sniff them out. Hopefully we can find a little bit of value, and hopefully we can figure out which one of these favorites are legit and which one of these have just taken too much action and could potentially cost us. So starting at the top, we got AJ McKee taking on Patricio Pitbull Freite. AJ McKee in the rematch is now a minus 350 favorite over Patricio Freite at plus 250. The last time they fought, AJ McKee's a slight underdog, this time minus 350. So it ended quite quickly. It's just like kind of a head kick dazes him, some follow-up punches drop him, and then he gets caught in a guillotine that puts him asleep. Of course, that's the perfect way to win a fight. You rock the guy, you drop the guy, you choke the guy unconscious. I mean, hey, perfect victory, right? But nothing actually happened up until that head kick glances him. So to go from you think it's going to be a drag him out, tough, work him up fight to now AJ McKee minus 350 does seem a little bit wide. But I'm an AJ McKee truther. I've loved the guy his entire run. Of course, his dad, Antonio McKee Sr., was my guy, man, the Mandingo. That's what he called himself, by the way. That's not what I'm calling him. But he talked the shit and he backed it up. He was a champion of an Alberta promotion up here, MFC. And I mean, not known for his finishes, but just excellent game plan. Put the grind on, guys. Always showed up in tremendous shape. IFL veteran. They gave him one UFC fight, bullshit lost to Jacob Volkman, and then they cut him because they didn't like his personality. But his ability to win fights was top-notch. He had this kid, AJ, he has a daughter as well, but his son, AJ, was always going to follow in his footsteps, and he was going to be able to instill all the stuff that he learned into his son. So it was a super cool storyline, and the kids just followed up beyond expectations. I mean, Bellator has done a pretty good job of matching him up, perhaps soft in the beginning, but it wasn't like he's fighting nobodies. I mean, he's got a win in his fourth fight over Benilo Deluardo, who ended up going to the UFC, win over 4-0 James Barnes in just his second fight, Cody Walker veteran, Ray Wood veteran, Dominic Mazzota, first-round head kick veteran, Brian Moore veteran, Justin Lawrence, Ultimate Fighter and UFC veteran, John Texera, UFC veteran, Pat Curran, former champion. It's just he's leaps above these guys. It's how's he going to do against world-class competition? And that's when you really see his last two fights, the Darren Caldwell fight and the Patricio Pitbull first time around. So in the Caldwell fight, he's taking on a guy that's a superior wrestler that's got terrible cardio, but at least he's going to be able to test AJ McKee early, and his grappling's pretty okay. He's dynamic, he's athletic, he's got some experience, perfect. And for AJ McKee to hit this like modified neck crank, I guess it's called like a buggy choke, unbelievable. He's super flexible. His grappling's top notch. His wrestling's good. His striking, you don't know it at the time, but it's like it's a work in progress. He seems to have pretty good cardio. The Brian Moore fight might be 1-1 going into the third, and he just walks out in the third round, takes him down, chokes him out. Like ability to make adjustments fight to fight, it's all there. And then of course you see the Patricio fight where his I would say his striking looks career best. But again, nothing really happens in that first round. They're both standing there. They're both staring at each other. And then finally, he throws the head kick, glances off of him, wobbles him, and just capitalizes on the opportunity. If he doesn't have some quick finish here, is it not possible that Patricio backs him up and has a classic Patricio fight? But yeah, I'm going to say no. Again, I'm an AJ McKee truther. I think he's the real deal. I think what you saw in the first fight as well is that he's much larger than Patricio. Patricio does have wins at 155 pounds, most notably Michael Chandler. He has held the Bellator title at 45 and 55. But the guy's got the frame of a bantamweight. Seriously, straight up, he does. He could fight at 135 if he wanted to. And that's what makes him such an incredible fighter, is that he never opted to fight at 35. He fought two weight classes too high and still had success. But it's going to catch up to you. And so what you see is McKee is much larger than him. McKee's also faster than him. He's more athletic than him. And so it doesn't look like Patricio's throwing anything because he's having trouble figuring out that range and gauging it. Now, in a 5-round fight, he's eventually going to figure it out. But I think he's going to have a lot of trouble. And I think AJ McKee is just a faster guy, stay to the outside, try to hit him. You know you can't hurt him. So you got that faith in your power now. He's still got the wrestling. He's still got the grappling. And again, you've seen spots in Patricio's career like the Daniel Strauss fight or even the first Daniel Weichel fight where he almost gets knocked out himself. Like he can go out there and get a victory and not look all that good. And in the Strauss case, he fought Strauss so many damn times, but you can put a grind on this guy, tire him out, be the bigger man, be the more physical guy. McKee's able to do that and outstrike him and do all this, then he is the rightful favorite for sure. And it's not like I'm going to bet against my boy here. But minus 350, it's been steamed at this point. So The move, I think, is you put AJ McKee on your top ticket because 350 is way better than a bunch of these other favorites, right? Some of these guys are 1,100, 1,200, right? We'll get to them in a bit. But AJ McKee's top ticket material, hopefully we can get it as close to even money. And then by the time the main event comes, if you want to hedge out, you have a huge plus money price tag on Patricio. It would be an easy hedge out opportunity because it's the main event, and we like McKee. So, that's where we're going to go with AJ here. Vadim Nemkov versus Corey Anderson. Current line, fairly close. Vadim Nemkov minus 65. Corey Anderson plus 130, 135 range. This is one of these ones that makes me a little bit nervous. Like, I'm almost tempted to pull the trigger on Corey Anderson, but a lot of it's kind of just narrative, and is Nemkov still that guy? But again, when you tape study him in particular, his fight with Prochazka in Rise 7 years ago. But all the same, right? First round comes out, he's a Sambo Spadalis taking on a kickboxer. He should be able to take down Yuri easy, and he does. But he gets swept a whole lot. He uses a lot of energy. And the longer this fight goes, he starts to tire. Like a minute left in the first round. Mind you, it's a 10-minute round. So they fought for 9 minutes straight. He's on top of Yuri, and he just opts to let Yuri up. Prochazka gets up, puts a beating on him to end the first round, and then he just walks over to his corner, collapses, exhaustion. He's super tired. It was just one 10-minute round. They throw in the towel. That's his first career defeat. But his very next fight with Carl Albrechtsen. Carl Albrechtsen's a Swedish wrestling champion, right? Big, strong, comes in good shape, a little bit green in the MMA world, but has good pace, has good wrestling. And so he's able to pretty much do the same thing. Nemkov starts off well, wins the first half of the round, but the longer this thing goes, he starts to tire, and Albrechtsen's able to start landing some strikes, start getting more aggressive, start taking him down. When he does take him down, he's having some success. Nemkov's able to get back up, but every time he gets back up, he exerts a bunch of energy. By the end of the fight, he's tired. Albrechtsen's in top control. This is an Albrechtsen win. They do score a split decision, but it's a rifle split decision. Like Carl Albrechtsen does win the fight, and a lot of it was pacing and wrestling. Now he wins his next 2 fights by first-round knockout, signs to Bellator, wins by first-round knockout, beats an old shot version of Liam McGeary with a leg kick game plan, very intelligent, but didn't exert himself. And he runs into Phil Davis. Now, Phil Davis is a legitimate fighter, right? So a win over him would be legitimate. And the fight's close for the first 2 rounds, but for whatever reason, Phil's not wrestling. He's just striking. For whatever reason, he's just striking for the first 2 rounds. Can't quite figure it out. It's probably 1-1. Probably 1-1. But it could be to Nemkov. I don't know. It's pretty close. But goes into the 3rd round. Phil Davis decides, you know what? I'm going to shoot a takedown. Shoots it, gets the takedown. Has a little bit of success. Nemkov scrambles, gets back up, tires himself out. Phil Davis goes, gets second takedown. Second takedown. Ooh, Nemkov don't get back up. He rides out like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Top control. Definitely wins the 3rd round. Probably wins the fight. They scored a split decision for Nemkov. But a lot of people do disagree with that decision. And one has to wonder why Phil Davis just didn't wrestle a lot earlier. Now, since then, I can't fault Nemkov one bit. He fights a pure striker in Rafael Carvalho. And Carvalho's moving up a weight class from 185 to 205. So, it should be an easy win for Nemkov, and he gets the win. He knocks out Ryan Bader. That's impressive, but it's an older, version of Ryan Bader, but you can't take that away from him. Nice head kick, glances him, hurts him, smells the blood in the water, pounces. Good win. Rematches Phil Davis, who similarly fights a stupid game plan, although Phil does shoot a few takedowns, and Nemkov's takedown defense looks better. He also fights Phil Davis in a 5-round fight. So whereas I'm questioning his ability to fight, hard, defend against a wrestler and defend for a prolonged period of time, he does do that against Phil Davis. He does fight him for 5 rounds. He does stuff the majority of his takedowns. He does win the fight. He's still young. So this is an improvement fight for him. That's credit to him. And then his last fight against Julian Gleekas, he looks really good. But Gleekas looks terrible, But if Nemkov at no point, 0 point, not 1 point in that fight is he in remotely any danger. Ends up on top, on him, beats him standing, outpace, Kimura's him late in the 4th round. Like, didn't seem like cardio was an issue. And so if this is the new Nemkov, yeah, he beats Corey Anderson. He beats Corey Anderson because he's got the better striking. Anderson is a little bit chinny. I know Anderson's worked on his own striking quite a bit. And to be honest, he's got pretty fast hands. He's pretty sharp. He's shown that he's got some pretty credible knockout victories on his resume. The guy's got a win over the current UFC champion, Glover Teixeira, and the former champion, Jan Blachowicz. He is elite, but you can knock him out. And one has to think if Nemkov can just stuff the takedowns, and he's eventually going to find the chin and knock Corey Anderson out. The reason why you're nervous and you almost think, why don't I just take a shot on Corey Anderson? It's because he's overtime Anderson. He's beasting 25-8 Anderson. The guy's all about going hard. 5-round fights do suit him. See, that's his good grace, is that he's a good wrestler. He's got good striking. The chin's not very good, but His pace is excellent. And if he can go out there against Vadim Nemkov and fight an excellent game plan of just shooting takedowns early, even if you don't get them, who cares if you don't get them or not? You need to grind on him and kill the space. I mean, hanging out at distance, kill the space, grind on him for the first couple rounds. Then he should, I believe, if you fight at a high pace, traditionally he has started to fatigue. If you do get takedowns, I think Corey Anderson can do a lot with them. I think he'll have a good ability to hold Nemkov down, potentially secure rounds. Wrestling's the name of the game. You got a wrestling advantage, you have an advantage. Corey can do that. And at the same time with Nemkov, his pace, he's got power. Sometimes his pace falls off a little bit. Anderson can just go out there and outwork him. You just outwork him. You just take him in some deeper waters. Fight the guy and utilize the fact that it's 5 rounds to tire him out. So if your book offers Bellator live betting, then again, I think Corey, if he can survive the first couple rounds, great, because he doesn't get slept early. That's a good sign. In those later rounds, if he really does have that pace, if he really does have that cardio, if he really does come in with a good game plan, if he can secure some takedowns, if he can just throw in combinations standing, even if they're not landing, just outwork this guy, you can actually see him getting the job done. So in a world where sometimes they don't give the right vision, they just decide, we're going to go the other way. We've been seeing it recently. Like, people want to say, it doesn't exist. People don't believe that. But then you see in Ohio, they just booed all of the Russians, right? You see the Peter Yan fight could carry the way less either way. It was a close fight either way. But a lot of people complain, but maybe you give it to the American guy. In this case, maybe you give it to the American guy if it's a close fight. And Anderson has the ability to make it a close fight. So we actually hit a PRP on the last Bellator event, but it was like 10 favorites, 9 favorites, and 1 underdog. Adam Borix, that was our 1 underdog. This card's going to be similar. We need to hit like 9 or 10 favorites, and there's going to be that 1 underdog. Is it potentially Corey Anderson? Even I'm not 100% sure, but as soon as the show's done, I got to throw it up live on YouTube, and I'll tweet it out with the picks. So I got to figure it out between now and then. But I'm still debating it. Like, I want to almost pull the trigger on the underdog, but I don't want to be one of those guys that just forces an underdog because one of them's going to win on the card. But I can recognize that he's fully won with a chance here. And even if I end up going Nemkov, it's gonna be lower down for sure. Aaron Pico versus Adli Edwards. This is a short notice. Aaron Pico, was initially supposed to take on Jeremy Kennedy from Canada, UFC veteran. Would have been a sweet fight. Unfortunately, not to be in Adli Edwards steps in. So yeah, this is a massive line. It's another Aaron Pico minus 1,200 is what I'm saying right now. Come back on Adli Edwards plus 700. So Pico, by this point, you probably know who he is. He was just a standout wrestler. Didn't even wrestle in college. Went from high school to like an international wrestling program where he's training with full-grown men, competing on the international team. Bids for a spot in the Olympics. I watched the Olympic trials that year, and I thought he should have won. It was one of these judges' decisions because it was a tie. Like, there was nobody had scored the point, and they gave it to his opponent. But it was like, Aaron Pico should have gotten that. So instead of waiting 4 more years for his next chance to compete at the Olympics, he's just like, screw it, transition to MMA, goes to American Kickboxing Academy, and the guy is legit. He knocks out Josh Thompson, who's like a former UFC title contender, was like a badass Strikeforce champion, like the man at one point. Top 5 guy in the world. And this kid's just like a wrestler. But it turns out he's also like a boxer, boxed most of his life, likes to strike. He is the dynamic prospect of the world. And then he had the career setbacks. They just threw him in way too early. He loses his pro debut against Zach Freeman. Zach Freeman's a 10-fight veteran. He's 8-2. Like, he's making his debut against a full-grown man, 10-fight veteran. Well, who does that? Even all of his other subsequent fights, 7-3, Justin Lin, Shane Crutchmer, 12-3, Lee Moore, Higo, who's like a tour title challenge, 18-4. Like, holy shit, man! Why are you doing it? And so he does run into Henry Corrals. He does run into Adam Boric. Pretty good. And what's led to this recent 5-fight winning streak is that he's been fighting kind of mid-tier guys. So that's definitely good for the confidence. He's over. His problem is that he can strike and he can wrestle, but he has an inability to blend those two skills together. He gets a few takedowns. When Borix gets up, he's now stuck in, I need to throw combinations. Don't throw but he's young. That's what leads to those losses. Recently, he's doing a very good job of blending them both together. He can wrestle with anybody. He does a great job of that. His cardio looks good. He comes in fantastic shape. His chin, it's looked in the past. But again, he's fought in world-class Justin Gonzalez's and the Aiden Lees of the world. Good mid-level guys. They're probably not going to chin check him. Jeremy Kennedy wasn't likely going to chin check him because he's not a power striker. But Adli Edwards is kind of in the same boat. I don't think he's going to find the money. Now, I actually do like this Adli Edwards guy, not against Pico. But I do like him. He actually wrestled D2 at Adli University, which is in Carolina, I believe. It's a D program. He had wrestled there. The guy knows how to wrestle. He comes in excellent shape. He's like a strength and conditioning coach. Has a good 8-1 amateur career. Turns pro. So far, 9-1 as a pro. I just watched him like last week on that XMMA Black Magic show. Adli Edwards, just calm, cool, collected, out-grapples him, puts a pace on him, breaks him down, submits him in the first round, post-fight interview, just breaks it down perfectly, like this guy overexerted himself. Like, he's in good shape. He knows how to wrestle. He has a decent enough record. He's a fine fighter, just not against Aaron Pico. Like, he's getting thrown in there pretty hard. He's taking the fight on short notice. Where he knows how to wrestle at a D2 level, not going to be enough. Where he knows how to strike a little bit, Pico's way faster. Pico's going to melt him with the body. And if you want to go puncher's chance, I mean, the guy's got one TKO win since 2017, 2 in his entire career. So he's got 9 pro wins, 2 of which are by TKO. I don't know that it's enough to just say he's a puncher's chance kind of guy. He ain't going to catch some fluke submission, I wouldn't say. But he's not a complete joke. He's not a complete write-off. Should Pico be a minus 1,200? No. Should Pico be a minus 750, minus 800? Yeah. And what people do at this point is they're putting all these guys together on parlays, and so their value are all just going pretty high up. And again, Pico's another one of these guys that you're probably going to want to play. So Pico, playable, I get it, big favorite, but again, we're going to have to parlay these guys together. Tim Johnson versus Linton Vassell. Currently, Linton Vassell is a minus 135. Tim Johnson is a plus 105, which is a shame because Tim Johnson was like a plus 120, plus 130 a few days ago. I kind of see a path for Tim Johnson. I know that sounds crazy, but again, a couple of these underdogs didn't come through. Why not Tim? So let's talk about Linton Vassell. Why do we want no part in Linton Vassell? So Linton's been around the block for a long time. He's a former 205-pound title challenger. He's 38 years old now. He's a little bit older. He's moved up to heavyweight. He comes in at about 204 pounds. Not the biggest heavyweight going. But at 205, he was known for his striking, right? Then he just worked exclusively on his grappling, became an excellent grappler, and his striking kind of fell to the wayside. At heavyweight, he's been relying on that grappling. He's a little bit faster than these guys. But he's relying on out-grappling guys that have suspect grappling. And his cardio just doesn't look to be there. So if you look at just his recent run, I suppose, the Ryan Baders of the world, the Phil Davis of the world, the Valentina Moldavskis of the world, that's his 3-fight losing streak. Well, those guys are always going to beat him because they have that wrestling advantage. It's not taking down Bader. It's not taking down Phil Davis. It's not taking down Moldavsky. So what's the path to victory, right? No path to victory. The longer the fights go, he tires out. Always starts out okay. The longer they go, he tires out. He gets stiff. He gets lethargic. He gets countered. And in 2 of these 3 fights, he gets knocked out. Phil Davis, not known for his finishing abilities, knocks him out. Ryan Bader, fair enough. That's a tough spot to be in. But almost always he loses because he's tired, not because he's chinny, because he's gassed out. Now, Sergey Haratonov moves up to heavyweight here. Sergey Haratonov, not known for his grappling. I think we can all admit that. Not a good grappler. He's also in his 40s. Linton Vassell takes him down. He submits him. That one's not the biggest surprise. Ronnie Marquez used to fight in the UFC at 185 pounds, where he was a washout. Not very good. Since then, he's ballooned up to heavyweight as well. Not very good. Not very good. He defeats Ronnie Marquez. Again, this is expected. The win over Tyrell Fortune is impressive. But again, if you watch the fight, the first round, he comes out good, right? Maybe losing the striking exchanges for the first 2 minutes. And then he completes a nice little takedown, trips Tyrell Fortune to the ground, gets on top of him. And it's all Linton Vassell. They call him Swarm. He's all over this guy. Most definitely wins the first round. The second round, they come out. He's tired. He's getting beat up by Tyrell Fortune. He's losing the round. And for whatever reason, Tyrell Fortune shoots a takedown, right? Tyrell Fortune shoots a takedown, takes down Linton Vassell, and then Linton Vassell just he hits a switch. He just curls into him, hits a switch, sweeps on top, holds top position, probably wins the second round because he now just ends up on top. But it could be 1-1. It could be 1-1. The third round, he's tired. He's getting beat up by Tyrell Fortune, and Tyrell Fortune takes him down again. And he just curls up on Tyrell Fortune, hits the exact same half guard sweep, ends up on top, and wins the third round. He didn't look good, but he was able to just win those one little spots and beat an inexperienced guy like Tyrell Fortune, who just made way too many mistakes. Well, now here's a problem with Tim Johnson. Tim Johnson, former Division II wrestler out of Minnesota. The guy is big. He comes in about 260 pounds. Used to cut down to 265, but now he's in a little bit better shape. He's a big boy. He knows how to wrestle. His cardio's not all that bad. And his wrestling is not as good as it probably should be. His striking is not as good as it should be. He shouldn't have lost that fight to Fedor Emelianenko in that fashion. Like, why are you standing in front of him and just letting it happen? But the fight's in Russia. The fight's in front of the GOAT. Yeah, okay, I want to give him a pass on that spot. If he fights the way he normally does, which is just be big, be that strong guy, force him up against the cage, whole lot of clinch work, Vassell's going to tire. And then at that point, Tim Johnson's herky-jerky striking is going to be enough because he's going to hustle him up and move him backwards. Vassell needs the takedown. It's going to be tough taking down 260-pound Tim Johnson over and over. Worked against Fortune, big guy, but Tim Johnson's just way more experienced, fought better guys. He too fought Valentin Moldavsky for 5 rounds. It was a good fight. The guy at his best is not terrible. Could you chin check him? Sure. But Vassell's gone away from his striking, can strike, but doesn't really strike all that much anymore. And even then, if he goes out with a striking heavy game plan, probably going to fatigue as well. If Johnson ends up on top, hitting a sweep on him, ain't going to be as easy as hitting a sweep on Tyrell Fortune. So he's a live underdog. But I think people are coming to that consensus as well because it looks like money's kind of rolling back a little bit on Johnson. And now he's only just a slight underdog. So I'm going to take Tim Johnson. I know I was on the fence about taking the underdog shot there on Corey Anderson, but I'm going to take the underdog shot on Tim Johnson for what it's worth. Tyrell Fortune versus Rakim Cleveland. Speaking of Tyrell Fortune, he's a minus 1,200 favorite in this spot versus Rakim Cleveland. And it makes a whole lot of sense. Like Tyrell Fortune is a former collegiate wrestler, good enough athlete, trains super high level, like got great training partners. He's just green. He just needs to make mistakes to get better. I know the guys out of Arizona, the Lawley brothers, they spend a lot of time with him. He's a pretty solid guy all around. But again, this is MMA. Like you have to have those career setbacks. It happened when he fought Tim Johnson. Tim Johnson just melted him. And he was for the record, a minus 800 favorite over Tim Johnson. But Tim Johnson knows how to get it done as an underdog, people. Johnson just bum rushes forward, clips him with an uppercut, hurts him, stuns him. Something he could do against Linton Vassell, by the way. The more you get him tired. But that setback leads to a nice little winning streak. Beats Said Somna, although contested decision. Didn't look great there. Beat Jack May, UFC veteran. Beats Matt Mitrione. Fights a great game plan against him. Just ground him, beat the crap out of him. Another UFC veteran. And then Linton Vassell fight. I truly, honestly believe he could have won that fight. Had he just not had those 2 bad spots. First round, you did get taken down clean, fair and square, and you couldn't get back up. That's a problem. The second round, you're out striking him, man. Just separate. And there's a lot of chances to separate, and he chooses to stay engaged in the clinch. It's just a rookie mistake. And again, this is just a learning experience. He's fighting a guy who's a former title challenger with 29 pro fights. It happens, and I know he's got 10 fights, but he hasn't really fought that great of competition, so there's going to be these setback moments. Could have won that second round, could have won that third round, could have won that fight. We wouldn't even be talking about it, but I think losing to Linton Vassell would be good for him, and now they're actually former training partners, so get that out of the way. You fought a guy that you knew. Fought a guy that knew to take you down because he didn't know what to do on the ground. Okay, get it all out of the way. That's fine. So now he's supposed to take on, apparently it was supposed to be Tim Johnson at first. That fight got shuffled. Tim Johnson obviously moved out of the fight. He's supposed to take on Steve Mowry, who's just a killer prospect. Those are tough fights. That fight pulls through, and then now he gets Rakim Cleveland. So it's the short notice nature of getting now Rakim Cleveland as opposed to 2, fairly world-class guys. That's why he's such a big favorite here. And Rakim Cleveland's case, he's just kind of maybe got that puncher's chance. Like maybe he can come in and land something, but his career has been a whole set of fight nobodies, beat the nobodies, step up in competition, lose the step up in competition. It's pretty much been that way. Now, I'll give him credit. He's willing to stand up. Like he shows career losses to Derek Lewis twice. Who wants to fight Derek Lewis once, let alone twice, fights him twice. Steve Montgomery is a UFC veteran. Brian Houston's a UFC veteran. Mike Biggie Rhodes is a UFC veteran. Tanner Bozer is a UFC veteran. Houston Alexander's a UFC veteran. Fought him twice, actually. Rashid Yusupov, PFL guy. Not all that good, actually, but, scary Russian. Maxim Grishin's a UFC veteran. Vinny Magalesh is a UFC veteran. Victor Nemkov, another one of these PFL guys. Well, he was in PFL for a bit. Vinny again. And then he goes on to win over Scott Hout. 7-10, right? A win over Kelvin Fatale, 15-9. And it's always striking. Like the guy can strike. He does show up in looks like physically good shape, maybe not fight shape, but he's willing to go in there and fight. He's willing to fight heavyweight. He's willing to fight light heavyweight. He's willing to fight pretty much anybody. And he's got a puncher's chance to that extent, but against lower level guys, right? If he went out there and landed something on Tyrell Fortune, then big up on him. But I think Fortune's going to have an advantage in the striking department. I think Fortune's going to have a big advantage in the wrestling department. But beyond everything else, just cardio and pace. You just need to tire down Cleveland a little bit. And once you tire him down, it's done. His last fight against Steve Mowry, again, a killer prospect. But once Mowry got the fight to the grass, just fish out of water stuff. And whereas Linton Vassell is very credentialed, very skilled guy, whereas he can give Fortune a lot of problems on the ground, Rakim Cleveland ain't going to do it. And that was a good learning experience the last time for Fortune, so he should rebound and right the ship. So I do got Tyrell Fortune. I do think the line's a little bit wide out, especially because they're heavyweights. And they're middling heavyweights. Paul Shaughnessy and we always talk about, don't want the middling heavyweights on their big price tags, but Fortune is the rightful guy here. We got Rafael Carvalho versus, I'm sure I'm going to screw up this name as I usually do, Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov. I don't know. Let's give him a nickname here. We'll call him Dovly. He was pretty decent. Like, he was the ACA champion coming out of Russia. He's a southpaw striker, likes to keep the fight standing. Pace is okay. Technique not super clean, but one of these some lower level competition, mostly guys that are a little bit faded or out of Brazil. Win over, say, UFC veteran Joachim Christensen. Does have a win over Karol Selinsky, was a KSW standout. Alexei Bontarin, who's a longtime Russian regional standout, Ukrainian regional standout. It's a good level of regional competition in terms of that part of the world. It's pretty solid enough. It's just that he had this nice looking record, was the ACA champion. So you sign for some decent money. You need to fight good guys. He takes on Corey Anderson. First round, I thought he fought quite well. Probably does lose the first round, but largely was able to keep the fight standing, throwing some strikes back, setting up that big left hand. Looks like there could be something there. Second and third rounds, he just gets taken down. Once he gets taken down, he's got no game, no ability to get back up. But I'll give him a pass because Anderson's a good wrestler, good enough grappler, and has excellent cardio. It's just a tough fight for him, especially in a stateside debut. So he loses that one. Then he draws Carl Albrechtsen. Again, we've already talked about Albrechtsen. Swedish wrestling standout, good pace, shows up in good shape, has a wrestling edge, and it's just rinse and repeat. Just go out there and take down Dovely. Nothing you can really do about it. So those game plans are going to work. They had initially matched him up with a fight with Tony Johnson, and it would have been grappling heavy, right? Johnson would have likely tried to take him down. Makes sense. This guy's shown that that's the easy enough path to victory. Don't want to just stand in front of him. It could be dangerous in that regard. But now he draws Rafael Carvalho. And then the interesting thing with Rafael Carvalho is former Bellator middleweight champion, who they recently just cut from the promotion. But now they need a guy on short notice. Why not step in? Why not step in and move up to 205, which he doesn't mind fighting at 205. He's just had no success. So once upon a time, yeah, he legitimately beat Brandon Halsey for the Bellator middleweight title. It was vacant. He was plus 550 underdog to lose to Halsey, who's done nothing with his career, by the way. Plus 550 underdog, vacant title. Goes out there, boots him in the body, hurts him, takes advantage of the situation, wins the title. Awesome. Fights Melvin Manhoff. Now he's a huge underdog. Well, he's a minus 255 favorite over Melvin Manhoff's in his 40s. Never known to have great MMA success. And he robbed Melvin Manhoff that first fight, man. Terrible fight. Nothing happens. But nothing happens and Melvin Manhoff should have won. So this guy probably should have never won the Bellator title over Halsey. He's a huge underdog. Just Halsey ends up being a fraud. He barely squeaks by Melvin Manhoff. He does, to his credit, rebound and beat Melvin Manhoff by head kick, which is impressive. Melvin Manhoff knocking him out. Well, Manhoff's got no chin, but you know what I'm saying. Excellent striker. It takes him 4 rounds to do so. Beats UFC veteran Alessio Sakara, who's washed. None of this is doing anything for me at a high level. It's cool reputation-wise, like you're beating cool guys. But in terms of elite level performances, they're not there. They're not there. Now you got to fight Gegard Mousasi. Perfect chance to show what you got, because now this is an elite level competitor, and he does not do very well. Mousasi knocks him out in the first round. Just basically has him outgunned everywhere. Carvalho, non-competitive. He fights Lyoto Machida. He loses a split decision. I didn't think a good fight. Weight cutting is becoming an issue, right? So he misses weight by half a pound in the Lyoto Machida fight. Comes in at 186 and a half. Loses a split. Blames it on the weight cut. Then he beats Chidi Njokwani, which is a nice win. Chidi's in the UFC right now. But he botches that weight cut too. He comes in at 189.9. So now he's missed weight. They force him up to 205. He loses to Vadim Nemkov. He does not look overly competitive. He loses to Alex Polizzi as a favorite. Holy shit, not competitive. out of the clinch. Mind you, I am an Alex Polizzi fan, but Polizzi just put that Northwestern grind on him up against the cage. He had nowhere to go, man. It was a bad performance. And then he loses to Lorenz Larkin, move 85 just to see if he, still had the magic. And that was a better performance for him. I thought he looked better against Lorenz Larkin, but he didn't look all that good. It was a close fight. Shouldn't have been a split decision, I don't think. I did score it for Lorenz Larkin. But he's now effectively 1-6 or 1-5 in his last 6 fights. Bellator pays him a decent enough money. He can't make 105. He's just too big. And when he does make the weight, he's just not effective. He's not effective at 205 whatsoever. So they release him from his contract. And now he's able to take a short notice opportunity to move up to 205 pounds and take on Dovletdzhan. Scary enough. Is he from? Where is he from? Turkmenistan. If you don't go out there and take this guy down, he's going to be clubbing that big left hand in your face repeatedly over and over. So looking at the line, it is, I guess plus 145, plus 155 range. So yeah, is it worth it enough to take a dog shot on a guy who's essentially moving up to a class where he's winless, taking on a fight on short notice against a guy whose easiest way to beat is not a skill set that you're particularly known for? 3-round fight, could be dicey, could be close, but yeah, I would have to say that is what it is. Gaston Bolanos versus Daniel Carey. This one's interesting to me because buyers beware, but if you know anything about Gaston Bolanos, he's an excellent striker, guys. Excellent striker. There's not quite any Muay Thai, so he transitions over to MMA. Perez 0-0 for Bellator. Rick Gutierrez 0-1 for Bellator. Bellator, Brick and back 3 go. So again, this is what happens on Bellator cards. Is there's a bunch of these guys that are minus 1,100 favorites, and we've talked about a number of them here. There's always these big upsets because there's always the guy's a good Muay Thai competitive standing early, but then Daniel Carey quite literally is just like not a flying guillotine choke, but he just like pulls guard into. He grabs a hold of him, he cranks his neck, headlock position, and then pulls guard on a guillotine choke and chokes Gaston Bolanos unconscious. Looks up at the ref and he's like, yeah, he's unconscious. Ref steps in. He lets him go of Bolanos. Bolanos then loses his next fight against Solo Hotley Jr. And he was I don't show the odds there. Anyways, he's a big favorite of Solo Hotley Jr. His wrestling looked a lot better. But the why he lost that fight on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards is he's getting out-grappled again. He's getting taken down against the fence. He's continuing working to get back up, but then he gets back up. He just gets taken back down again. So it's nice to see the effort from him. It's nice to see that he was able to fight for 15 full minutes. When the fight is standing, he's putting a beating on Adli, but he has an inability to keep the fight standing. And even when you do get back up and like all that work is just undone if the guy's just going to pull you back down. So there's going to be red flags and there's going to be opportunities to beat this guy. Carey's done it once already. Why couldn't he do it again? The thing is that you start to wonder if maybe it wasn't a bit of a flash in the pan. Like he beat Gaston Bolanos, so they threw him in there with Aaron Pico, which is a bad decision. And he got melted. The first round, he goes out there. He's letting his hands go. He's trying to stay aggressive. And then Pico's like, I feel like taking you down now. Picks him up, slams him like a sack of potatoes. Effortlessly, and then wins the first round with his top control. Second round comes out and absolutely kills him. KO, big win. They book him against Gadzi Rabadanov. Again, another huge favorite against him. I don't know why they do this Daniel Carey guy no favorites, but again, he's knocked out in the first round, and then that was it. Hasn't fought MMA in about a year. He took a kickboxing match, lost. He took a boxing match, won. He hasn't really done the whole grappling thing. So that's what leads me to believe that Gaston Bolanos has been working on his grappling a lot. This guy, meanwhile, lost a couple of MMA fights and seemed to go back to striking disciplines. And if he comes in here and tries to use those striking disciplines against Gaston Bolanos, then yeah, he's going to lose this fight. If he's not able to just snag up some guillotine in the first round and this thing extends longer, yeah, Gaston Bolanos probably wins this fight. But minus 350 on Bolanos, considering the dude yoked him out fairly easily the last time they competed. He's not shown any major improvements in his grappling, although you can see improvements. Not enough to beat Solo Hotley Jr. Like, this could be one of your apple pie shitters. It could be one of your... It's just priced off. I got Gaston Bolanos winning, but I would have liked to have get him at a much better price tag than minus 350. Unfortunately, if you're looking at this card, there's not a whole lot of price tags. And the last thing I'll say about Daniel Carey is that nobody in their right mind would sign up to fight Gaston Bolanos, right? But he did. The guy had huge balls, shows up and fights a badass striker and got the win. That was pretty crazy. And then who the hell wants to fight Aaron Pico? But they'd give you some money to come and get your ass kicked, which he does. And then why would you want to fight Yagshimuradov, especially coming off that kind of knockout loss to Aaron Pico? But he takes a Yagshimuradov fight. Like, this guy's not managed very properly, but he's also one of these guys they call in for that filler. I'll take that big fight. I'll jump in there. I'll do the damn thing. He'll come out there. He'll try to be aggressive. He'll try to make it happen. But I don't know. Maybe he did just get lucky that one time, and maybe Gaston Bolanos has got his number this time around. So I will pick Gaston Bolanos, but it will be a little bit lower down because I recognize that there could be some potential for some apple pie shit in there. Kyle Crutchmer versus Michael Lombardo. Kyle Crutchmer is a minus 285 favorite versus Michael Lombardo plus 212. I got Crutchmer. It says it's probably going to be Crutchmer by decision, and it could be a little bit closer and a little bit more competitive of the decision. So a minus 285. Does that seem like it's a walk in the park price? But it could be a little bit more competitive. But I like Crutchmer a lot. This guy is a former two-time NCAA D1 All-American out of Oklahoma State University. So wrestling is top-notch. He was a former Big 12 champion twice, I believe. Wrestling is definitely there. They bring him into American Kickboxing Academy. He works with a bunch of high-level guys. He's got excellent wrestling. Pacing pretty good. But like a lot of these guys that are transitioning from a purely wrestling base, striking just not all that good. Not super comfortable with his hands quite yet. Looks like he could have a little bit of power. Looks like his striking's coming along. But for the time being, he's young, he's green. It's a little bit stiff and robotic. So he starts off undefeated and he runs into this Cameron Lachinov. There's an argument he won the fight. I thought he fought excellent. I thought he did a good job. The problem is that Lachinov's one of these crazy dudes, end up being on The Ultimate Fighter after that, who will walk you down with his hands down, with his tongue out, will be yelling, and then will slug you with a couple punches. So Crutchmer's problem is that he doesn't throw in combinations. He only throws in 1-2s, 1-2s, 1-2s. It's basic, and he's a basic striker. So when he's throwing 1-2s and this other guy's kind of rolling with them, marching you forward and clubbing you twice, it's visually good for the judges. So not that he fought a bad fight that night. It's just he was young. He needed a setback to learn from that, and that was it. So he loses a decision. His last two against Levon Chokeli and Oliver Enkamp. Enkamp is Chokeli was undefeated at the time for whatever it's worth, but he's not very good. Enkamp's a UFC veteran who's more of a striker, so they're favorable matchups for him. But I thought he fought smart. I thought his striking, again, looks better. Looks like it is improving, but he's not stupid enough to rely on it solely. He's got his wrestling in his back pocket. He's a good wrestler. He's one of these guys that can fight 15 minutes and put a grind on you. And that's what likely is going to be the situation. Lombardo, meanwhile, he's an American top team guy, and he's trained with the best guys in the world. And he, too, is a decent enough wrestler. You don't see enough from him, and you don't see enough from him in these spots. So, of course, he was on the Contender Series, which feels like forever ago now. But it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, he's on the Contender Series versus Kyle Daukaus. Prior to that, he's largely fighting on that Florida regional scene. Again, training with great guys, but never overcoming the hump. Against Kyle Daukaus, is grappling. I don't know. He just looked like one of these mid-level regional show guys, can strike, doesn't prefer to strike, prefers to be in the clinch, prefers to grind on you. It shows up in excellent shape. Like physically, this guy's, great body on him. Cardio, pretty good. Just doesn't really have that big fight experience. Doesn't have that big move. He's not going to knock you out. He's not going to solely, against lower level competition, he can just out-grapple them and outpace them. But against the step-ups, it's not going to work. So he loses to Kyle Daukaus. And then since then, he fights fairly low-level guys for the most part. Favorable matchups. I mean, Justin Thornton is 6-16. That's a wash. Jose Caceres is actually the only guy to ever beat Kamaru Usman, so you can't completely write him off. But, of course, he's undersized in the later stage of his career, known for one big victory. Is not, just gets, beat up in there. Corey Cuppy, my boy, long pant kickboxer, not known for his grappling, not known for his wrestling. Lombardo can put a pace on a guy like that. Kyron Bowen, again, this is a striker. This is a guy that wants to keep the fight standing. He wants to strike. I thought that Lombardo did a good enough job of striking a little bit in that fight, but just not enough. So now he runs into Kyle Crutchmer, who, in my opinion, would have a slight striking advantage and definitely has a wrestling advantage. Is going to have the same pace, if not more pace. Is a little more physically strong. So he's just kind of got to outgun him in every one area. And Lombardo kind of averages like a fight a year, like that. Well, maybe not. He fought 4 times in 2019, and then twice in 2020, once in 2021, once in 2022. Hasn't fought a grappler since the Kyle Daukaus fight. It's possible that he's made improvements, but I haven't seen enough from it. So I'm going to go Kyle Crutchmer. This one's a little more evenly matched considering you get a ton of big favorites on the card. So I would think that Crutchmer is someone who's Bellator's had an investment in for quite some time. They signed him fairly early. They've done a good job of matching him up. He's currently on a 2-fight winning streak. He's fighting a lot better. He's getting a little more comfortable. He's had that early career setback that he can learn from. And they're bringing in Michael Lombardo for the first time here. Bellator debut. Good matchup for Crutchmer. They know what they're doing. And I agree with it. So Kyle Crutchmer for the win. Now we get into some massive favorites. Bobby Soronio versus Caleb Ramirez. You got Bobby Soronio is a minus 1,100 favorite over Caleb Ramirez. Bobby Soronio is just one of these guys that's been doing MMA for a long time. He's only 23 years old, but he's coming out of Soronio martial arts. His family's a martial arts family. He's been doing it basically his entire life. He's under, his head coach is listed as his father, second coach, Dave Tyrell, right? So the kid's grappling is pretty legit. And Bellator, what Bellator does an excellent job of is they can't compete with the UFC in terms of like, it's the UFC. So they'll go get these guys at the grassroots level. Now, UFC will sign you. You might have 7 fights, 8 fights. That would be generous. But you can get through the contender series and you might only need 4 or 5 fights to get in the contender series. Well, Bellator don't give a shit. They'll just sign you for your debut. And for a debuting fighter to say, well, I can fight for Bellator right away and get paid some actual money instead of fighting a bunch of these random-ass regionals in my home state, yeah, it's a good move. So Soronio fights as an amateur. He looks the part. His grappling looks pretty legit. And they debut him against this Socrates Hernandez. Hernandez is a lot taller. Hernandez is scrappy. Hernandez wants to go out there, get in his face, make it aggressive, and make it a fight. And Soronio doesn't look super comfortable standing, to be perfectly honest. Like off his back foot, you can kind of crowd him a little bit. You can overwhelm him and frustrate him a little bit. But then he shoots the takedown. Once he gets the takedown, that's it. And Socrates Hernandez, for the record, is a BJJ brown belt. And at no point did he have any success. While he had enough success to last and survive and just defend the positions, but Soronio was all over him. He's 23. It was his pro debut. He's only going to be getting better. He's only be racking up more ring time, more experience. And again, he's a career martial artist that doesn't have a job. His whole job is basically focused on this. This is going to be a career for you. Bellator likes him. Bellator signed him off the hop. Bellator knows what they're doing. And that's what they're doing. So against Caleb Ramirez, he's an 8-9 amateur, whereas a lot of people, 8-8 amateur, whereas a lot of people would kind of laugh that off. It's 16 amateur fights. So he's definitely got experience. The problem is that he's one of these, I'll show up and fight anybody, bad style matchups, ill-prepared, a little bit hurt, just shows up for the big opportunity. And what happens is when you're an 8-8 amateur, you turn pro, you go 1-1 as a pro, you dream of fighting in the UFC, but it's not going to happen. You dream of fighting under the bright lights, but you realize, well, I'm just not at that level. When a Bellator comes to town, and a Bellator gives you a call and says, you want to make $4,000 to fight on the prelims? Hell yeah, I want to make $4,000 making the prelims. But it's actually a 2+2. You never ever get the other 2 because you lose. But these guys are willing to sign up on the dotted line and do so. He's got the amateur experience, but again, he's been choked out as an amateur 3, 4, 5, 4 submissions, 1 TKO loss, and then as a professional, he got submitted in his last fight by guillotine choke. Bobby Soronio should just be too physically strong. He should get the takedowns when he wants them. He should out-grapple him when he wants them. Does he get him inside the distance? I'm not entirely sure. Socrates Hernandez did a good job of lasting, but again, I think he's tough in a BJJ brown belt. Don't know that this guy is, so I would think Soronio by submission, but all the same, the kid gets the job done, and I know it's a huge astronomical price tag for a kid that's 1-0, but Bellator seems to know what they're doing. And compared to some of these other guys, I think he's probably a little on the safer side. Speaking of Socrates Hernandez, he takes on Rogelio Luna. Rogelio Luna is a minus 220 favorite. Come back on Socrates Hernandez plus 172. I would pass on this one, passing on this one on a personal note. I just don't really know enough about Rogelio Luna. Like, I couldn't really find if he had wrestled anywhere. Couldn't really find anything about jiu-jitsu. Couldn't really find much. He does have a 3-1 amateur record. Looks like he's pretty okay. But to say he's a 220 favorite over Socrates Hernandez, I wouldn't agree with it. Socrates Hernandez shows the 0-1 as a pro, but the loss is to Bobby Soronio. So we just talked about the fact that he fought a pretty tough guy. He got out-muscled. He got taken down, but his jiu-jitsu was good enough that he was able to survive some bad spots. Yeah, he looked durable enough. He looked scrappy enough. At weigh-ins for this show, Bellator is going to have a similar size advantage. He was scrappy. He wanted to fight. He was getting his thrown in his face. He just got overwhelmed. As an amateur, again, he shows he is getting taken down and he is getting controlled. And maybe that's the thing on Rogelio Luna that I'm not seeing or haven't seen enough of, is maybe Luna's strong and physical, is going to get easy takedowns and stay out of harm's way. All completely possible. But not enough for me to really go with it. So I think I would be inclined to put Hernandez on like the PRP pick, or just pass on. Just pass on it altogether. You don't have to have action on every single fight. And this is a 14-fight card. Most books will cap your ticket at 12 fights anyways. So you need to drop a fight. This is the fight. The odds don't make sense. It's an 0-1 guy versus an 0-. Go down that road. You really don't. Laird Anderson 1-0 versus JT Donaldson 4-5. This one I'd be more inclined to go down. This Laird Anderson guy looks pretty legit. So his father, I think his father's Japanese, but moves to Brazil and links up with the Gracies like way back in the day. So his father's like a career martial artist, has Laird, and the kid's been doing jiu-jitsu his entire life. I think he starts when he's like 4 years old. Similar story to Bobby Soronio. He's a career martial artist, been doing it his entire life. But, I mean, he's done an excellent job of moving up the ranks. As an amateur, he goes 3-0, decides, you know what, time to turn pro. He's still only like 21 years old when he turns pro. Bellator signs him, and he beats his Ricky Abdelaziz split. This looked very green to me in that fight. Very one-dimensional in his grab. Does have boxing, does have kickboxing, but certainly not enough, and he's still very young. So Bellator doesn't really put pen to paper right away. They're like, you know what, you got the win, split decision. Why don't you go mature a little bit, see if you come back. He was a BJJ brown belt at the time, right? So he's since gotten his BJJ black belt. He competed other black belts, right? He beat Ben Eddy. He beat this Nathan Wontrobe. He's got a couple losses, but even this Keith Krikorian, the last guy that beat him, Krikorian's a good grappler. Check him out in Submission Underground. Like, these guys are strong. These guys are physical. He's still young, and he's competing against high level. So the kid's only improving and getting better and coming along and making progression. He's going to have that jiu-jitsu. His physicality as he's maturing as adult is going to get a little bit better. He just can't be fighting terrible matchups. And John Donaldson is 4-5, 9 pro fights on that matchup. And JT Donaldson pass there. But I've seen this guy in Vancouver. He came to Canada. He was brought in specifically coming off a loss from the States as an opponent for Jamie Siraj. Jamie Siraj is from BC. He's a fan favorite. He's never going to make the UFC. He's never going to make it to that level. But Jamie Siraj is a good local Canadian fighter. And they bring in this JT Donaldson specifically. He goes out there, he gets caught in a front choke in the third round. His grappling didn't look all that good. His cardio didn't all that look good. He followed that up by losing in 43 seconds against this John Cardenas a year later. Takes a couple years off, and then came back last year, winning against a 3-3 guy and an 0-0 guy. I think he's just an opponent. I think he's probably still struggling with his grappling. And whereas he has a lot more professional experience, Laird Anderson has a lot more martial art experience. He's been doing it his entire life. His dad's a black belt. He's a black belt. He's competing at the Combat World Jiu-Jitsu against full-grown men. I think it would be a good transition. And I like that Bellator gave him time, and he took the time and improved and got better. So, yeah, I got Laird Anderson. Now, again, should a kid who's 1-0 and 23 years old be taking on a guy who's, I guess he's only 29, right? He's not like he's rugged 35-year-old from the Midwest or something. But does the line make sense in that regard? Probably not. But, I could pick up what Bellator's putting down here. So, Edwin, or I would say probably gets the win. Next up, where are we at? I think we missed a couple fights. We missed Tyson Miller versus Highland Gracie. This one I would say is another pass. If you can pass on 2 fights on the card, I think you want to pass on this one. Because Tyson Miller is just way too big of a favorite, coming in at -450 against Highland Gracie, +330. I think this one would probably be a lot of like wiki capping, right? You look at one guy, he's 2-0. Look at the other guy, he's 0-3. Easy enough, right? -450. Tyson Miller, it's not like I don't completely hate him as well. I think it was at NAIA college. But anyways, he spent 2 years junior college, played football and wrestled, right? He does seem like a pretty good physical athlete. He's big, he's strong, he carries a little bit of muscle, but he's a little bit stiff and rigid in his ways. As an amateur, he's 3-1. He lost his last amateur fight against an 0-1 opponent. And it just looks like he's very green. Bellator signs him. He beats Albert Gonzalez. It's a whack-ass fight, man. Like, I think he's winning, It's not particularly like he's doing much. Again, you can see him. He's a little flat-footed. He's a little bit stiff. He's moving around. He's not going for any type of kill shot. He's a debuting fighter under the Bellator bright lights that's debuting. Nothing special about him at this point. Probably is a good athlete, but we got to see how this fight progresses, right? And then Albert Gonzalez throws a kick. It gets checked by Tyson Miller, shatters his leg. Nasty. Anderson Silva stuff. Brian Gassaway stuff. Nasty. Shatters his leg. That's the end of the fight. Bellator didn't bring him back immediately. He fought on this XFC Young Guns 2 against Luis Cordon Navarro. Picks up a decision there. Again, he's still very young. He's still just figuring out his game. It looks like he is physical, and he's going to have to use that physicality to keep this fight standing against Highland Gracie, because if Gracie's able to trip him up, get the fight to the ground, or even pull guard and somehow hit a sweep and end up on top, well, then he's going to be in trouble. And even if it doesn't quite hit the ground, Highland Gracie's striking not very good, but he's willing. He's willing to go out there and let his strikes go to a certain extent. Whereas from what I've seen from Tyson Miller, like, he's still a little bit hesitant. So now it's your second Bellator fight. You still don't have a whole lot of pro experience. You've got 2 fights since turning pro in 2019. You're still very young in this game. You're back under the bright lights. It's a live crowd in California. It's a big card for them with a couple of title fights. A lot of their highly touted prospects are on the show. And you're fighting a Gracie. Like, the moment slightly gets to him, he's going to be prone to making a mistake. And then when you're looking at some of the favorites that are prone to making a mistake and costing you, he seems to me like that guy. Like, I'm willing to take my shot on Kyle Crutchmer. I'm taking my shot on Bobby Soronio. Willing to take my shot on Laird Anderson. Tyson Miller, I'm not 100% sure I want to go down that road. He will end up on the ticket, but he'll be way at the bottom. And again, if your book offers you only 12 fights or they cap you off at a certain number, maybe this is one of the ones you let fall to the wayside. Edwin De Los Santos taking on Albert Mendez. De Los Santos is another one of these astronomical favorites. No, he's not that big. I guess minus 350 against Mendez, plus 250. Edwin De Los Santos, I mean, we know him from his Bellator debut where he came in against John Adams. He's a Muay Thai striker, right? Looks like he's got a pretty good Muay Thai base. Guy that was competing at not a high level, but a decent enough level. And California's got an excellent Muay Thai scene. So, yeah, the guy's a good enough striker. Again, there's not a whole lot of money in Muay Thai, so you eventually make that transition over to MMA. And he shows as an amateur 4-0 record, 3 of them by TKO. That's who he is. Turns pro and he gets this John Adams fight. And yeah, you see that the guy's pretty fluid, pretty strong. He was a massive favorite, I remember. Had him on ticket. Minus 750 favorite in that matchup. But again, Bellator knows what they're doing. We got a very talented Muay Thai striker. We don't want him getting fed to the wolves. We don't want him taken down. We don't want him getting tested. But here's somebody that's going to be a warm body. We can start to build up a resume, start to build up a highlight reel. All part of business. And John Adams is that victim. Alberto Mendez, I'm not really sure. Well, what I see from him is he's also a Muay Thai stylist. Comes from the exact same discipline. Also competed at Muay Thai, albeit at a lower level. And again, you see in his amateur fights, he's 3-0 as an amateur. He gets a lot of quick finishes, right? 28 seconds into the third round, minute 20 into the first, 54 seconds into the first. And then his pro debut is a no contest. I wasn't able to find that one, although I was intrigued by it. Yeah, see, in my mind, the Bellator knows exactly what they're doing. They're going to bring this up. It's going to be striker versus striker. I think that you brought in Edwin De Los Santos the last time, fed him an easy opponent. The tape study suggests the kid's fluid. He's confident. He gets a liver kick finish, a rare move, good move, solid move, wins his debut. Big confidence coming into this next one. Again, Bellator is not the kind of company that's going to give him a grappler if they don't think he's ready for it, a wrestler if they don't think he's ready for it. They're going to bring in another guy who's very young in his career and is going to do the same thing, stand in front of you and have a fun fight, entertain the crowd, have a fun scrap for the people that are in paid attendance or watching on the YouTube live stream. That's what it is in Canada. You Americans got it on TV. There's no television deal in Canada. It's strange. So they give it to you free on YouTube, prelims and main card. You can access it anywhere, mobile device. It's great. It's great. It's great. Unfortunately, Bellator is a good promotion. They should be on television. What can you do? What I'm getting at is I haven't seen enough from Mendez to suggest he's a better striker than De Los Santos. So I'm going to take Edwin De Los Santos. Isn't that a big assumption for somebody who's a minus 350? Like, do you really want to hang your hat on this one and be like, oh, well, it's a guy that's 1-0 in his career versus taking on a guy that's 0-0 in his career, and it's striker versus striker, and they're both going to go throw heat, and they're both green, and they're both inexperienced, and they're both prone to slipping up and making mistakes. Minus 350? Well, that's why I leave it in the hand of the Bellator matchmakers, because they know what they did on this matchup. and they see that De Los Santos is a little cleaner, a little more crisper, has a little bit better technique. And I think that's the case myself. So officially, we're going with AJ McKee. I'm going with AJ McKee. I'm going with Vadim Nemkov. He's going to be lower down the list. We're going with Aaron Pico. We're going Tim Johnson. Hopefully, there's our underdog. We're going Tyrell Fortune. We're going with Yagshimuradov over Rafael Carvalho. We're going with Gaston Bolanos, another favorite. Kyle Crutchmer, Bobby Soronio. I'm going to go with Tyson Miller, way lower down. Edwin De Los Santos. We're going to go with Socrates Hernandez. Is going to be our dog number 2. Laird Anderson. Oh, and then we still got Theo Haig. So Theo Haig, this is another assumption fight, but he should smash. But he's like minus 1,000. Yeah, he's a 10-1 favorite. Theo Haig is a strength and conditioning coach out in like the San Francisco area, I believe. Definitely in California. Strength and conditioning coach. Guy shows up, real good shape. BJJ brown belt. Looks like he's strong, physical, got good cardio, and he's got decent enough grappling that if he can grab a hold of you, rip you to the ground, he's probably going to submit you. Amateur fight, just one of them, did exactly that. Took it to the second round, tired his opponent out, got the takedown, got the submission. Pretty clean work. It looks like if he fights average Joes, regular guys, weekend warriors, he's going to be just fine. If he was to jump up a level, I don't know what else he brings to the table, but he's not going to have to worry about that for the time being. Because Alan Benson is just another fellow Californian local guy. He's 6 feet tall, so he's like tall for the weight class. The problem is that when you're that tall, you have a high center of gravity, not low. So the takedowns against these strong physical guys are going to come a lot easier. And then so far as an amateur, he was 1-4. Never got submitted, but did get TKO'd twice. The first of which against this Eddie Egan, who's 1-2. He gets taken down and pounded out. And then the second which against Blake Degmedich, who's 3-4. His grappling's certainly not there. Turns pro, much of the same. He's 1-2. Bellator brought him in once. He hustled up a split decision over a 2-2 opponent. They did not sign him. They let him go. He got melted by a crescent kick versus Justin Berry, but Justin Berry looks to be a decent enough prospect. And now Bellator bringing in him as an opponent again. That's what they do. They have their pool of guys they want to work with. They sign contracts. They fight on these cards. They got their pool of guys that'll come in for one and dones. They'll fight once. They'll go back to their regional show. They'll fight once or twice. Win or lose, Bellator don't care. Bellator will just wait for the opportunity to bring them back, feed them to the regular roster guy. It's much of the same here. I don't know that Theo Haig has a real bright future, real long-lasting future, but in this style of matchup, he probably smashes up. So Theo Haig's the pick. So, effectively, again, oh, man, Cody, you're picking all favorites. Well, listen, we're all picking the favorites here. We got a lot of favorites. What I would say, though, is AJ McKee's top ticket guy. He's going to be up there. You could take Corey Anderson if you're hunting for a dog. I think he's got a shot. I just don't think my balls have dropped enough to take that shot myself. Pico's a big favorite. You can trust him, I think. Tim Johnson's our dog. That's our best dog of the card. Tyrell Fortune, I think he's trustworthy here. Yagshimuradov, not overly trusty. I think he wins. Lower down. Gaston Bolanos should win. Lost to this guy already. Might have suspect grappling. Keep it a little lower. Kyle Crutchmer, I don't mind. But I can't just completely wash away Lombardo. So Crutchmer will be mid-high level. Bobby Soronio, he's high up. Tyson Miller, way low. Edwin De Los Santos, mid-high. Socrates Hernandez, he's our other underdog. He's way low. Laird Anderson, he's going to be mid-high, if not high. Theo Haig is going to be mid-high, if not high, right? Those are the guys I'm more confident in. And, of course, it's a greasy-ass Bellator card. So if something was to happen, maybe you can rebuild. Maybe you've got soft limits on your book. Who knows what the case is. Those are the picks. Even if you're locked in your stuff by now, completely understandable. You want to try to beat the line movement. But at least my book anyways, they don't really let you pound it until it's later on. They want to see that settlement. And at the same time, even if you just are watching this video to try to cross-reference some of the stuff you got, that's where I'm at. So it's not like I'm super confident in this Bellator card, despite the large number of big favorites. We love these cards. Pie shooters in the mix. I got to believe we can get the right order to make it profitable at the end of the day. So anyways, yeah, I'm going to make this thing live on YouTube and shortly, tag it up, and then send it up to picks. Let's make some money on Bellator, hopefully. Friday night. What better to do on a Friday night than build that bankroll to play on Saturday night in UFC? Anyways, catch you guys later.